Hello everyone, I am here to explain to you about Article 1215 to Article 1219. So these are the articles under the Joint and Solidary obligations. But before we start, I'd like to give to you some ideas about Joint and Solidary obligations. When we say Joint and Solidary obligations, there are not refers to prestation. There are refers to the parties involved. So let's start with Article 1215. Meaning to say, novation, compensation, confusion, or remission are the modes or causes of the extinguishment of one's obligation. For example, D owes A, B, and C the sum of 3,000 pesos. So A, B, and C are the solidary creditors and D is the debtor who owns 3,000 pesos. As I said earlier, one of the extinguishment of one's obligation is novation. So let's talk about novation first. It says that novation will take place if any of the following will change. First is if there is a change in object or principal condition. The second is if there is a change in debtors. And the third is if there is a subrogation by the third person in the right of creditor. So any of the three, not necessarily cumulative. Novation, strictly speaking, does not totally extinguish the obligation. Why? Let's go back to the second paragraph of our article. So, if C remitted the entire obligation without A or B's consent, the obligation will still be extinguished. Why? Because the moment that there is a change, one obligation is extinguished, but another one is created. So another is if there is a change in object, instead of paying money, the obligation now is to deliver the property as a payment for the principal obligation. So same in the change in debtors. The first debtor is not liable for the obligation, but there is a new creation obligation, but this time affecting the new debtor who substituted the original debtor. So one obligation is extinguished, but another one is created, that is novation. Most importantly is, novation can be considered as a valid mode of extinguishing one obligation. Intention to extinguish, novation is not pursued, and also, novation should be an equivocal term. So that's all for Article 1215. For example, A, B, and C owes X with the sum of 3,000 pesos. So in our article, meaning to say that if X failed to collect the obligation to A, it shall not be an obstacle to those because X have a right to demand anyone from B or C. So if ever B paid the entire obligation, so the obligation will be extinguished. But let's say B only pay a half of the obligation, so the creditor have a right to demand the rest obligation to C. So Article 1216 says that the creditor have a right to demand anyone from the solidary debtor, but once the obligation has been fully collected, the obligation will be terminated. Next is Article 1217. So in the first paragraph says that once the debt has been fully collected by the creditor, the obligation will be extinguished. So if ever two or more offer to pay, the creditor may choose which offer to accept. For the second paragraph, so same example, assuming that C accepted is the offer of X who paid the entire obligation. In this case, X, one of the solidary debtor, have a right to demand from Y and C for the reimbursement of 1,000 pesos each. So another is when X paid the entire obligation on due date and he is claiming for the reimbursement but Y and C didn't pay. In this case, X can accrue interest from Y and C. For the third paragraph, again same example, but this time C cannot give 1,000 pesos because C is insolvent. So in this case, X have a right to claim the portion of the amount to C for the reimbursement of Y. So how is it happen? X paid to C with the amount of 3,000 pesos. So there is a reimbursement for Y and C with their respective share of 1,000 pesos each. So all in all, X, Y, and C have a respective share of 1,000 pesos each to each other. But in this case, C cannot pay for his share because C is insolvent. So now, X and Y are liable to pay the respective share of C, meaning to say, X and Y have a portion to pay with the amount of 1,500 pesos each. Article 1218, meaning to say that if there is a contract between the creditor and the debtor, and the creditor didn't demand the debt for the period of more than 10 years, the obligation or the agreement between the two parties will be prescribed or become illegal. So in this case, the payment made by one of the solidary debtor shall not entitle him to claim the reimbursement from his co-debtors. For example, X, Y, and C owe C the sum of 3,000 pesos. The debt is due by December 31, 2020. On due date, C didn't demand. C also failed to demand the obligation for the next 15 years. However, C voluntarily paid the debt of 3,000 pesos. So in our example, despite the prescription, C, one of the solidary debtor, paid the debt of 3,000 pesos. So the question is, C is liable to claim the reimbursement from X and Y? So it is definitely no, because the contract has been already prescribed or become illegal. Moving on to the last article, Article 1219. But in Article 1219, the relationship between the debtors are then governed by the Article 1217, which is to express the duty of co-debtors to contribute the share of the insolvent debtor. Meaning to say that if the share of one of the solidary debtor has been remitted, it doesn't mean that he doesn't have obligation at all. For example, A, B, and C owe D the sum of 3,000 pesos. However, D renounced the share of C. So in our example, D renounced the share of C, but it doesn't mean that C is no longer a solidary debtor. So meaning to say, D still have a right to collect the payment to C for the rest obligation worth of 2,000 pesos, which is supposed to be the respective share of A and B. On the other hand, C have a right to claim the reimbursement from A and B. So that's all for Article 1215 to Article 1219. I hope you understand.